All right. What we're going to find when we look at these groups of reactions is that some will be aerobic, some will be anaerobic. Meaning some have to occur with the presence of oxygen, some do not. Glycolysis, which is simply glyco meaning sugar or glucose, lysis to break down. We're breaking apart glucose. It is anaerobic. We do not require oxygen. Oxygen can be present in the cell, but it's not necessary for glycolysis to occur. However, the matrix reactions and the membrane reactions are aerobic. We have to have oxygen for these reactions to go forward. If you bought the packet, page 31, why don't you go ahead and find that for me. It's a series of tables. It says carbohydrate metabolism summaries. Unfortunately, it wasn't on Blackboard. I just found out about it. I just uploaded it to Blackboard between classes, so it's there. Basically, it looks like this. It's a series of tables. There's one for each of the reactions we'll go through. Looks like this. One says respiration type, reactants, products, and what's the other one? Location? Okay. So for glycolysis, we just said it's an anaerobic process. It does not require oxygen. It actually occurs in the cytosol of cells, in the watery matrix of the cell. So what do we need for glycolysis to occur? Well, obviously we need glucose. We need NAD. We're going to need some inorganic phosphates, which is abbreviated P sub I. It's an inorganic phosphate. And, believe it or not, we're going to require ATP. Yes, we require ATP to make ATP. Very small amount. If you want to make money in the stock market, you got to have some money to invest, don't you? Hopefully your returns are greater than what you invested. In glycolysis, it will be. And we'll look at why that ATP is necessary next week, Monday. Now, what do we get at the end of all this? Well, we get NADH plus H plus. We get ATP. We actually get more ATP than when we started. And we'll look at specific numbers after we go through the process. We end up with ADP. In various parts of the reactions. And we end up with something called pyruvate or pyruvic acid. It's a 3-carbon molecule. Today, this is glycolysis here, from here down to here. So all this is glycolysis. What we're going to find is that at the end of glycolysis, there's 2 pathways that the final product of glycolysis can take. What did we say one of the final products of glycolysis was? We listed those out, didn't we, on a table? ATP, which is used pretty much immediately by the cell. But then there's another byproduct that's pretty important as well. Pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Now, depending on if there's oxygen present or not, is going to determine what happens at this point, and we'll get into that. But you'll notice that there's a lactic acid pathway. That's actually the anaerobic pathway, and then there's the aerobic pathway, which leads into the citric acid cycle. And well, we'll get into all that fun stuff. And then we have the final one, electron transport. And as I said last time, we have side reactions that can feed into various parts. Notice that various proteins can feed into or produce pyruvic acid, which can then go into this reaction here. Or we have nitrogen products coming from proteins that can feed into acetyl-CoA here, which then feeds into citric acid cycle. All right, so we have a lot of side reactions that can feed into various parts that will ultimately then lead to the production of ATP. What we're going to find is that the majority of the ATP, significantly, maybe 80%, 85%, is produced in the electron transport chain. We're going to get very little ATP from glycolysis. We're going to get very little ATP from the citric acid cycle, but we're going to get the majority of the ATP from the electron transport chain. The key with this is, however, is that oxygen has to be present. What did I say before about oxygen? I said it in the respiratory system. Don't tell me that we need oxygen so we can breathe. Oxygen acts as the final electron acceptor in this process here. So we talked about the glycolysis, mentioned glycolysis, the matrix reactions, which includes the reduction of pyruvate and the oxidation of pyruvate and the citric acid cycle, and the membrane reactions consist of electron transport and something else called oxidative phosphorylation. And so we'll talk about all those as well. Talked about the basic reaction for cellular respiration and its relationship to photosynthesis, and how this ATP here that we get from cellular respiration, from my point of view, is basically sunlight. And to understand why that's sunlight, you have to understand the relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Talked about oxidation and reduction. Very important things to know. I'll be talking about that today. Again, we also talked about NAD plus and NADH plus H plus, about what those differences might be and what those things are. We'll start actually seeing those today. We said that the matrix reactions are aerobic, as are the membrane reactions. Glycolysis really doesn't require oxygen. It can occur during aerobic conditions, but it also occurs when there's oxygen is not present. So last time I just checked aerobic. Glycolysis, it doesn't matter if oxygen is present or not. It will still occur.